Disclaimer: this story explores themes of passion, betrayal, and desire. It is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Her laughter spilled through the room like warm honey. Sweet, dangerous, impossible to ignore. The dim chandelier cast a golden halo over her skin, tracing the delicate curve of her neck as she leaned in. And then his scent, woodsy and dark, slid around her before she even noticed how close he was. She turned, and there he stood, inches away. His eyes caught hers and held them with a weight that made her pulse falter, her breath stutter. The music still hummed in the background, but the silence between them thrummed louder, alive, electric. A brush of his fingers, just a whisper against her wrist as he reached for the glass. Not an accident. Never an accident. The touch seared through her veins like fire, leaving her lips parted, words trembling but unsaid. He only smiled, slow, knowing, anchoring her in place. "Careful," he murmured, voice like velvet heat at her ear. "Spill that drink and you'll owe me more than an apology." She tried to laugh, soft, shaky, but her body betrayed her. Her heart was hammering, louder, louder, like it wanted him to hear. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not with him, not tonight. And yet, the way his gaze lingered told her it already had. Then another voice, deep, familiar, her husband's. She stiffened, the sounds slicing through the haze like a blade. Slowly, too slowly, she turned. Her smile faltered, cracking as realization struck like lightning. But it was already too late. The other woman was gone, and her husband wasn't alone. Her pulse still hadn't settled, drumming hard in her chest. She forced a smile, thin, brittle, while her thoughts spun out of control. He stepped into the room, broad shoulders filling the doorway like a wall she couldn't move past. But it wasn't just him. It was his eyes. The way they slid past her, landed on the man standing too close. A flicker, sharp, unreadable, crossed his face, and guilt pierced her skin like needles. For one fleeting second, she burned with shame. But then the weight of the past months crashed back down. The silences at dinner, the touch that had turned perfunctory, the late nights at work, never explained. She had tried to pretend, tried to hold the pieces together. But the crack in the glass had only spread wider. Until tonight. Until this man. She didn't even know why the pull was so strong. Maybe it was the way he saw her. Really saw her. His glances weren't hurried or distracted. They lingered, deliberate, as though he was reading the thoughts she never dared to speak. When his fingers brushed her wrist earlier, it hadn't been just a touch. It had been a question, an invitation, one she didn't know how to name and couldn't bring herself to refuse. Now he stepped back, slow, almost reluctant. His jaw tightened, and for a moment she wondered if he was hiding his own secrets behind the restraint. The air grew taut, humming with quiet tension. Her husband moved closer, slipping an arm around her waist, warm, but heavy, a claim, not an embrace. She smiled because that's what wives do, but something inside her shifted. "Having a good time?" her husband asked lightly, though his eyes flicked once more toward the man standing beside her. "Perfect," she whispered. "Too soft, too brittle." Her husband's best friends answered with a smile that never reached his eyes. Gone in a heartbeat, but she saw it. And for one dizzying second, she imagined a life where that smile was real, where the heat curling through her chest wasn't wrong, wasn't dangerous. But reality snapped back, sharp and merciless, when another laugh drifted from the other room. The other wife, carefree, elegant, oblivious, or maybe not. Maybe she already knew. Maybe they all did. And tonight was no longer harmless. It was the beginning of something no one could stop. The music swelled, and she felt his eyes on her again, pulling, tethering. Even as her husband's grip tightened like a warning, her heart betrayed her, hammering with a forbidden whisper. What happens if I give in? Then it came again. His hand, brushing hers. So quick, no one else could see, but she felt it, and she didn't pull away. The room buzzed with conversation, laughter, soft music, but all she could hear was her heartbeat, loud, reckless. Her husband's hand pressed against her hip, a silent command, but her gaze betrayed her, darting to the man across from her, the man who had already set fire to nerves she thought were numb. She laughed at something her husband said, too bright, too brittle, because underneath, her thoughts were drowning in danger. Every glance was a door, and together they were already standing on the threshold. Across the room, the other wife appeared again, elegant, confident, smiling, unaware, or pretending not to be. Guilt pressed heavier on her chest, but something else rose up, wild and defiant. Why should she feel guilty for wanting to feel alive? He moved then, slow, purposeful, closing the distance under the guise of polite conversation. His voice, low, rich, slid over her like a secret. "You look different tonight," he said, his gaze locking into hers. There was no mistaking his meaning. Her breath caught. Her husband turned for another drink, attention fractured just long enough. And in that fragile heartbeat, his hand found hers again. This time it lingered. His thumb traced an invisible line over her skin, sending shivers racing through her body. She froze. Her pulse roared in her ears. One step closer, and there would be no return.
Then her husband looked back, and she snapped her hand away, too quick, too guilty. The man only smirked, a ghost of a smile tugging at his lips, a promise, a challenge. From across the room, the other wife was watching now, not smiling, not speaking, just watching. And suddenly, the air felt thinner, the stakes sharper. Tonight wasn't just an innocent evening anymore. It was a loaded game, and someone was about to make the first move. The night deepened, shadows stretching longer across the polished floors, as laughter faded to murmurs in the other room. She slipped away under the excuse of fresh air, her pulse pounding with every step down the hallway. She told herself she just needed space, distance. But when the cool glass of the balcony door met her fingertips, another presence followed, quiet, deliberate. She didn't turn, she didn't need to. She could feel him behind her, the heat of his nearness cutting through the night breeze. "You always leave when it gets loud," his voice murmured, deep and velvet soft, threading its way through her restraint. She turned slowly, heart thudding so hard she thought he might hear it. He was close, too close, and the dim golden light from inside spilled across his face, catching the sharp lines of his jaw, the intent in his eyes. "I needed air," she said, her voice barely holding steady. "Or maybe," he stepped closer, his shadow mingling with hers, "you needed this." The words sank deep, and for a breathless second, everything stopped. The party, the music, the world. Just his eyes locking onto hers, pulling her into a place she knew she shouldn't go. She should leave. She should walk back into the safety of that crowded room. But when his hand lifted, hesitant at first, then sure, and brushed a strand of hair from her cheek, her knees weakened. His touch burned, not from heat, but from meaning, from the promise that nothing would be the same after this. Then a sound, footsteps coming closer. Her stomach dropped as panic and desire tangled inside her. He didn't move away. Neither did she. The space between them crackled like a live wire, seconds from sparking into something unstoppable. The footsteps grew louder, her husband's voice calling her name. And still, she couldn't look away from him. She froze, heart hammering as her husband's voice drifted closer, steady and unsuspecting. The man didn't step back. If anything, his gaze burned deeper, locking her in place like a secret neither of them could let go. "Say something," he whispered, his breath warm against her cheek just as her husband's shadow spilled across the balcony floor. She opened her mouth, but the words tangled with the racing storm inside her. Then he reached for her hand, bold, unafraid. His fingers wrapped around hers like a vow she hadn't agreed to, but couldn't break. "Everything okay out here?" Her husband's voice cut in, sharp now, tinged with suspicion. She yanked her hand free too fast and turned with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Just needed air," she said softly. But her husband's gaze darted between them, reading the space, the heat that still lingered. His jaw tightened. The silence stretched, dangerous and heavy. And then, before she could stop it, her husband smiled. But it wasn't warm. It was cold, calculated. "Good," he said, stepping closer, his hand brushing her back, "because I was hoping the four of us could talk." Her stomach dropped. The four of us. She followed his glance toward the open doorway, where the other wife now stood, her silhouette framed in gold light, her eyes fixed on them like blades. The woman felt the ground shift beneath her feet as realization struck. This wasn't a coincidence. The late-night invitations, the way her husband had insisted on tonight, the knowing smirk now curving his lips. He knew, he had always known. Her pulse thundered as the other wife stepped forward, her expression unreadable but her voice low and sharp. "So," she said, eyes flicking between her and the man who still hadn't moved away, "are we all done pretending?" The air fractured. Nobody spoke, nobody breathed, until her husband's hand tightened on her waist and the man's fingers brushed hers again, bold, defiant, like a spark in dry grass. One word could burn everything down.
The silence shattered like glass. Her husband's smile didn't fade, it sharpened, cutting. He stepped closer, his hand sliding to her lower back, heavy, possessive. "Pretending," she whispered, her voice cracking beneath the unbearable weight of the moment. The other wife moved forward, heels striking against marble, each step like a warning. Her eyes locked on the man by her side, the man who still hadn't released the woman's hand. "Tell her," she said coldly, her gaze sharp as a blade. His jaw tensed, and then he spoke. "I can't keep this secret anymore." His voice was low, steady, unflinching. "I wanted her before tonight. I've wanted her for months." The words hit like a blow, sucking the air from the room. Her knees weakened, shame and desire collided, twisting until she couldn't tell which was stronger. Her husband's fingers dug harder into her waist, and then he laughed. A sound so cold, so cruel, it chilled her to the bone. "Finally honest," he said. "Guess it's my turn." Her heart pounded as his smile curved into something darkly amused. "You think I didn't notice? You think I didn't see the looks, the touches? I wanted this to happen." She stared at him, numb, disbelief rattling her bones. He leaned closer, his breath scalding her ear. "I wanted you to see how far you'd go." Her stomach churned, fury tangled with humiliation. But before she could speak, the other wife snapped, "Enough games!" Her voice cracked through the room like a whip. The woman turned, meeting those blazing eyes. Betrayal, yes, but also something more. Anger not only at him, anger at her. The man finally let go of her hand, but not before giving it a hard, desperate squeeze. A silent question, a plea. She yanked it away as if it burned. "Are we done?" her husband asked lightly, as though the world hadn't just tilted on its axis. "No." Her voice broke, but it carried steel. She turned away, eyes wet, shoulders trembling, and walked past them all. The cold night air bit at her skin like judgment. Behind her, voices erupted, accusations, confessions, sharp-edged words slicing through the night. But she didn't stop. She couldn't, because if she stayed, she would shatter. And yet, at the door, she felt it. A presence, a voice, low, raw, pulling at her very soul. don't leave." Her hand froze on the handle. Her breath hitched. For one dangerous second, she didn't move. She stood trembling against the cool glass, voices clashing behind her like crashing waves. Accusations, regrets, truths too long buried. She didn't want to hear any of it. She wanted air, she wanted silence, she wanted her heart back. Then she heard it again. Not loud, not angry, just one voice, soft and stripped bare, threading through the storm. "Please don't leave." Slowly, she turned. And there he was. No smirk, no teasing confidence, just truth, raw, vulnerable. The man who had upended her world now stood open, hands out as if offering her something more than desire, something real. For one endless moment, the world shrank to the space between them, the crackle of night air, the hush of the city, the thunder of her own heartbeat. "I can't," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Everything is ruined." He stepped closer, careful, like a man approaching something fragile. "Not ruined," he said. "Not if we choose differently. Not if this means more than tonight." Tears burned her eyes, not from pain this time, but from the terrifying, dizzying bloom of hope. Because she saw in his face the promise that this wasn't a game, wasn't revenge. It was a confession, the kind that could change everything. He reached for her hand again, but this time, no secrecy, no hesitation, just honesty. She let him take it. Her fingers curled into his like they had been waiting for this moment all along. Behind them, the argument blurred, voices fading into a dull roar, like the night itself had chosen to shield them. She didn't look back. She didn't care. For the first time in months, maybe years, she felt alive. His forehead pressed to hers, breath mingling with hers. And in that fragile closeness, all the noise fell away. No more pretending. No more. And then his lips found hers. A kiss like redemption, slow, deep, rewriting every rule, leaving no room for doubt. The city lights glittered around them, 1,000 silent witnesses to a love too dangerous, too undeniable to turn away from. The future was unknown, but it was theirs to claim. And somewhere deep inside, she knew with terrifying certainty, this wasn't the end. And that was just the beginning. A night of secrets, confessions, and choices no one can take back. But what happens next? Will love survive betrayal, or will it all collapse into ashes? Tell me in the comments below, what would you do if you were in her place? And if this story pulled you in, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with someone who loves a little danger, and subscribe for more stories that will leave you breathless. Because sometimes the end of one story is just the start of another.